Welcome to the Recruitment Mentors podcast. My name's Hisham Azuz. Today I'm really excited to be joined by David Jenkins, who is the Managing Director of Vertical Advantage and also the founder and director of Nurture Talent. Vertical Advantage was launched in June 2012, and over the last 9 years they have solely focused on serving the FMCG and consumer space, recruiting from everything across sales, marketing to logistics and procurement. There's currently 16 people within this brand, and they have 3 more people joining the company in January. In September 2019, David launched Nurture Talent with Andy Davis. They offer an embedded talent solution and subscription pricing model where they partner with scale-ups who want to hire quickly and effectively. Now, this isn't David's only recruitment business or his first. So before this, before launching both these businesses, David actually started another recruitment business where he received VC funding from James Kahn in 2009. But after a couple of years, David exited this business and sold his shares in the company. Despite adversity, both businesses, both brands, he's been really pleased with the growth, the year they've had, and I know David is going into 2022 excited, optimistic, as he plans to achieve more growth on both these brands. So David, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Looking forward to this. There's a lot we can unpack. There's a lot to cover. So where I always like to start is the £1 million question, which I'm sure you thought a lot about as a leader of a recruitment business. So love to hear your thoughts on this. So I'd love to just hear your take on what you believe are the traits, characteristics that really make up a successful, high-performing recruitment consultant in today's market.
Okay. The first thing that I would look for in any recruiter at any level is urgency. I think it's one of the most difficult things to actually test for in an interview scenario, to try and work out how urgent somebody is, how they deal with things, how quickly they work. And you can it's something that with every exceptional biller that I've ever kind of met, come across at any different level, they just are always on it. They're always really, really sharp. They're always moving from one thing to another, but they know if they need to pivot and they need to change, they'll do that quickly. We could talk a lot about a number of different traits, but I honestly put urgency at the very, very top. The other bit I think that is more relevant today than it was 5, 8, 10 years ago is the recruiter today, I think, needs to be 1/3 salesperson and relationships, 1/3 HR and understanding human psyche, behaviors, culture, what makes a good cultural fit, and 1/3 marketeer, being able to not only to be a sector expert, but to be able to position yourself as a sector expert. And to be able to talk really, really freely, both online, openly on LinkedIn, or via blogs or emails, and actually provide that real added value, being that sector expertise.
Couldn't agree more. How have you got better at looking for urgency in an interview? Because I'm sure it's something that you've continued to think about, if it's that important to you.
Well, we've done a lot of grad hiring this year.
Okay.
So we did a lot of analysis. When we were kind of coming out Q4 last year, we did a lot of analysis over the previous 3 or 4 years of everyone that we hired, all the levels, the salaries we paid them, how they performed, what they billed, what the ROI was, etc., etc. And we kind of just realized that ultimately we were getting the best ROI and the best development from the people that we'd hired as either grads or second jobbers, but they hadn't done recruitment before, and they wanted to come in. So we've done a lot of that this year, and within our interview process there, we set 2 tasks.
Okay.
So if they get through, so I interview everyone first of all. I receive all the CVs. I look through them all. Anyone I like, I email immediately, and I deliberately have an email conversation with the person, and I see how quickly they come back to me on email. So the quicker they come back to me, the better a sign it is that I want to book that person in for a call quickly. Yep. So I'm already starting to make a decision on what their email community. I'll ask them something spurious in the email just to see how they respond. And sometimes people make a stupid spelling mistakes, or they say something silly in the email, and that's a bit of a turn off. But still go through with the call. We have a quick 20-minute to half an hour call. If they're punchy and reactive on that call, I'll book them in immediately for a Zoom call with my commercial director. But again, I'll introduce them on email, and I'll leave it to them to book the interview themselves.
Right.
So I want to see that they are driving the process then at that stage.
I like it.
We'll obviously send the Zoom invite. So all the way through the process, we're trying to see like how on it these people are. And then when we get them to the interview, we put them through a fairly rigorous, probably 1 to 1.5 hour interview. And then we have a couple of tasks and exercises. So we give them a job description, 6 CVs, tell them to give them 15 minutes to come up with the best 3 in order, reasons why they're the best 3. And then we ask them to write an email selling in those candidates to a client, and we give them another 10 minutes to do that. And if they can achieve all of that as a grad with no experience in recruitment, they could get through it. You probably offer them a job.
Like it. I feel like that's been refined over time.
Taking a while to get there.
I like it.
It's still a work in progress.
Yeah.
It's still a work in progress.
I like the subtle sort of urgency. I like that. I think that's great because I think it should give you a real insight into what they might be like. I mean, if they're not urgent for themselves, how urgent are they going to be for another human being?
100%. I have had people come back to me, after 3 or 4 days saying, "Oh, thanks for your email. Like, let's book in a call." And and at times I'd be like, "Well, sorry, you missed the boat. That's not quick enough."
Yeah.
And I know that sounds harsh, but like it's what we're looking for.
Yeah. So just curious, just as we're on this topic. So obviously, done more grad hiring this year. So you've spoken a bit about the interview process. Just keen to get your thoughts immediately, really, on speaking to a lot of recruitment companies over the last couple of months, and real challenge is hiring for their own companies. I mean, it's always been a challenge, but for most companies I speak to, they've really got back this year to hiring that trainee. If I'm honest, I think most people I speak to, they actually prefer that's what they want, but. Typically, a lot of companies I speak to are always open to experienced hires, but I think this year that's been really difficult just because, I mean, look, if you're half decent, you should be making some good money this year with the sort of how sort of crazy the job market is. So I guess what I wanted to ask you and just get your immediate thoughts on was speak to a lot of people who are just finding it really difficult and are just like, what advice do you have, or people you speak to that have worked hard on getting better at getting in front of grads or selling to grads or attracting grads? Could you share with me? So I don't know if there's anything that you've learned this year that maybe you've seen have a direct impact on the amount of sort of attraction you've got from grads or that type of talent out of interest.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I wonder when you're talking to people about that and you ask them about that process, the main change that we've made this year is that I've driven it.
Okay, so the business owner, the owner of the company, driven it.
The owner. So most people are saying, well, the biggest thing I want to do is hire more people. The biggest thing I want to do, and then you say, well, who's doing the interviewing? It said, oh, it's the senior consultant, or it's our talent manager, or and I get it. Businesses far bigger sizes than us. They need to have that structure and that thing. But for me, I will always, regardless of what size we get to, and let's hope kind of we're sitting here in a year or two's time and we're at least double the size of where we are now. But for me, it will always be the most important thing that we do, and it's hugely important for our culture. And I think it's helped us to win when we've been competitive with grads who've had 3 or 4 offers, that I've had the engagement with them from the very, very start. And I'm not saying they're joining because of me, but always I've been able to then have a relationship with them where I could pick the phone up and say, look, I think you can make a balanced decision. These are the things why I think we'd be a great fit for you, but I could totally see why these other options might be things you want to consider as well. So personally driving it is one. And then actually on the overall attraction bit, I think that people are not paying attention to grads on LinkedIn enough. Yeah. So grads, obviously we'll advertise on all the main job boards and LinkedIn and stuff like that. That's not rocket science. But lots of grads in their last year are on LinkedIn.
Yeah,
now.
For sure.
And they're, like if they're anything like me, they've no clue what they want to do. So again, some really, we've actually hired 3 grads from Loughborough and we've hired 3 grads from Bournemouth. And there's no doubt in my mind, like, I love my sport, and whenever we meet people who are into their sports, their rugby, their football, whatever it may be, they, that's just something. And, we've got a 5-side football team and we do kind of some hit stuff.
Yeah.
So it's just a trait of a lot of the people in the business. So we target people at those universities who are in their last year at uni, and we try and connect with them, find out what their plans are, etc. And if they know anyone else who's looking, and we also get our grads to go back and talk to people at the universities and see if we can get ahead of the game a little bit there.
Smart. Final thing on that, just really quickly, curious, what do you think grads of today actually want from your perspective? Like, what do you think they're motivated by, just from your conversation? Because I think this is probably where you've had to adapt, I feel like, or recruitment companies have had to think about what they articulate, communicate. What do you think?
We were talking about this yesterday.
Really?
I was chatting with some of them yesterday. One of our directors went off on maternity leave yesterday, so we had a little mini baby shower online. And but then I ended up having a chat because I was talking about a couple of these hires that we've been making, and I honestly think that the culture is now the most important.
Culture.
Yeah. I honestly do. I think for grads, obviously everyone's different, but I see more these days coming in saying, I want to work for the right kind of business, going to be the right fit for me as an individual. And whereas, a few years ago, money would have still been top of the list, would have been, earning potential. I think a very, very close second actually is career progression and development. Yeah. I get asked that question pretty much in every interview that I do with a grad on that first call. Is, that's usually the second or third question that I get, but usually the first question is culture.
Nice, thanks for sharing. So let's get straight into the juicy stuff, David, if that's okay. Let's just get straight into it.
Nervous.
Let's just get straight into it.
Nervous.
No, because look, you've been in recruitment for nearly 20 years. So there's a lot, years. Right? So let's just get straight into it. So where I want to start is this journey that you went on with the VC side of things. So let's start there, and then we'll really unpack the last sort of decade, basically.
Okay.
So obviously, bar that for anyone. Obviously, I've got David's LinkedIn up here, but obviously before that, you worked at a recruitment company for 5 years, progressed to director before you did that, right? So I guess firstly, like what was you hoping raising investment would enable you to do when thinking about starting a recruitment company? So what was it that you was hoping it would enable you to do? Was it enable you to sort of grow at pace? Was it enable you to grow it, like invest in the best tech immediately, invest into people? I don't know. What was you hoping it would enable you to do out of interest?
Yeah, but you know what? The two main things from that actually stem from my prior year with the first business that I worked for. So I actually joined there in 2002, 7 years actually from grad to director level. And I sat on that board of that business, which is a really, really nice business. We grew it to about 80 people at its max. I sat on the board with 3 other people, the MD and two others. And we'd have board meetings that would last the entire day. And a lot of the stuff that we would talk about, I just couldn't believe that we were talking about, like going into the minute detail of the change of price of stationery from month to month would be an example. There was a slide on that in the board pack, and I was like, this. But this is the guy who set up that firm was an ex-senior consultant from Michael Page. Okay. So he was a self-taught MD. All the other people who joined that company were grads that had worked their way up from grad to director. So our learning journey as a board was basically, we were a bunch of recruitment consultants that grew up to be directors of...
It's just learning on the job.
Yeah, exactly that. So actually, for me, the investment piece was great because it enabled us to grow at scale. It enabled us to hire. We set up in April 2009, which is probably I would akin to like setting up in January of this year. Just as the market's coming out of a crash. Yeah. Really, really brilliant time to start. Hired lots of great people. So the cash was great from that perspective. But for me personally, it was the learning journey. Okay. I wanted to learn. I was a good recruitment director. I've had a team of 20 people across 3 offices. I was a decent operator, a good biller, not the best biller, but a decent biller. And but I wanted to learn how to run a business. I wanted to learn what a P&L was, what every line of the balance sheet meant. I wanted to learn like what payout rate was, what ROI was, and I felt James Caan and the team that he had there, they've done it, I would learn loads. So it was a twofold journey about a learning piece, and also, hopefully we're going to grow, scale something that, going to sell in the future, and, buy a small island off the Caribbean, and, that would be me done.
Okay.
Didn't quite work like that, as you can tell from my backdrop, but, I did get the learning.
Yeah, no, I like that. Okay, thank you. So always interested to hear, so for anyone listening that may be considering going down that route for maybe other reasons, but what did you learn, or what ended up being the most crucial part that you had to communicate when convincing people like James Caan and his vehicle as to why they should back David? Like, what was really crucial? Because if you said it was a learning, I'm assuming you've never put together an investment deck before, or a business, so what ended up, because I'm sure that was learning, so what ended up being really crucial looking back that you think, I don't know, anything important around that?
Yeah, I think with them, like we were coming as a team, so there was 6 of us starting. So there, it was nice to have, like, to be able to. They had the trust in me that I was bringing 5 pretty experienced, pretty good people with me on the journey, and that they believed that they could all report to me and I could be their MD. So that helped, and that was obviously compelling. But that's not a necessity, certainly if you're looking at investment. I honestly think that whole convincing someone to invest in you, you have to be true to yourself. You have to be, you can't kind of pick things kind of pie in the sky. You have to be honest with like where you are in your career, what you need, and then what is achievable. So don't over-egg it, basically. Yeah. So, but also, look, there are some standard things. Being in good markets, being in growth markets, being able to spot where niches are and where development opportunities are. And again, with that business, when we were pitching to James, we could call out. This was 2009, right? We were able to call out in retail, e-commerce is going to absolutely fly, right? So we were able to call out. We can target the likes of Net-a-Porter, ASOS, etc. They will be amazing clients, and we can really, really over-index on that. And you could see that there were really, really good growth opportunities in various other pockets of the market, and that really, really helped.
I like that. So, I mean, share with us what you can. But, like, I guess people are interested and keen to know. I'm sure you've been asked this question before.
Yeah, of course.
Like, how was the deal structured? Because I think this is where sometimes people can be a bit worried, because I think the perception, I don't know, people I speak to, I think the perception can be quite a negative one of going down the investment route. They're going to take all my money and all this, still feel employed. Like, how was it structured out of interest? Like, was you the majority shareholder? Was you not? How did it work?
No, James was the majority share. James and the VC business were the majority shareholder. So they were about 66%, and we were the remaining 34%. I was the second highest shareholder. Invested our own cash. So
you have ratchets that if you do this, then
yes, I'm ratchets to grow to get to a higher level. And to be fair, ratchets that were achieved. So it wasn't It wasn't an underperformance thing as to why it kind of evolved the way it did. It was more, board to ND kind of thing, that it was probably more appropriate that I moved on, took my money out of my shares, and let somebody else come in, because ultimately I think my learning journey had stopped. Yeah. And I really wanted to be the majority shareholder. It was going to be impossible to make that happen in the timescale that I wanted it to happen. So that's kind of why I ended up going. But, I think the learning there is, I wouldn't put anyone off getting investment. I actually think it was an incredible thing to do, but it's doing it for the right reasons. Yeah. If your plan is to grow, rapidly scale, or your plan is to live a kind of a certain way or a certain lifestyle, and it doesn't dictate that you need to be 100% shareholder, I think the investment is a really, really good route to go down. Yeah,
I think that I was going to ask you advice, but you've nailed that. It's just anyone listening that's considering going down that path, like really, really make time to think about why. And yeah, it is true. I think that's really what it boils down to. And once you have clarity on that, then hopefully you'll be able to make the right decision or better decisions. I guess just quickly, final point on this, just to wrap this up, just because I think it'll be useful. What were were the ratchets like? Were they all similar, just different targets, or was it around like net fee income? What were the typical ratchets out of interest? That could be interesting for people.
Yeah. It was net fee income and EBIT.
Okay, nice, super simple then.
Yeah, so we had to maintain a minimum of a 20% margin, and then we did a 3-year budget forecast. So basically, the ratchets kind of went along kind of as they came. So yeah, and we achieved those, and that was great. But I think it's the input level where you've got kind of a VC business, and then you've got a kind of you're always pushing, right?
Yeah.
You'll see it in any industry, right? It's growing, and then sometimes that's not the most sensible thing to do with the business. Sometimes there are times where actually you shouldn't be hiring. You should actually just be letting people bed in or doing different things. But, in that kind of scenario, it's pressure to do it. And actually then you're making decisions which aren't necessarily the best decisions for the business, because you're trying to hit a target, you're trying to hit a number, you're trying to hit a ratchet. And it's like, well, we've got to do it. But actually, that's what I mean about like getting the right investors and the right support for but thinking about what you want to do with the business longer term, because actually you don't want that support to then impact how you're going to run your business.
Got it. So vertical advantage. So like, talk to me about. I feel like I'd be interested to know when you thought about vertical advantage in the first instance, like what was top of mind for you. I think a lot of people would then go into launching their own recruitment business and be like, right, I'm going to do this differently. I'm going to take that which I liked. I'm not going to do that. What was like David's mindset towards sort of approaching vertical advantage differently out of interest?
Well, the first thing was there was 140 clients I couldn't touch for a year, and I had
a year.
So I had
wow.
So yeah.
So six months, isn't it? Typically, people would experience.
But I was getting paid out on shares and stuff like that, so it was a prescriptive list, right? So it was every client that the business had an interview with in the previous year.
Wow. Okay.
So it was basically So I knew who I couldn't go after, which then made it quite easy, actually, to go, okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
So I sat myself in, like, I had been off the tools for about 18 months in terms of recruiting day to day.
Yeah.
So it was great to give myself 6 months to just go and do that, build some clients, build some relationships, make a few placements, et cetera, before starting to kind of scale it. So I guess I think I took the view that, again, there were some niches within some of the spaces that we were operating in that would have been great growth areas, and we would have pushed kind of further desks on. I just kind of focused on those. So things like CRM, data analytics, insights, which is, a hybrid part of a kind of a marketing department, really, but we weren't really focusing on those. I really pushed that in the kind of the early stages, and then the scaling kind of the FMCG consumer piece, and what vertical advantage really stands for is that we wanted to be a sector specialist that had specialist individual recruiters across these different areas that we hire into, so supply chain, procurement, logistics, sales, marketing, digital, etc. So we could go to any client, Pernod Ricard, Revlon, Reckitt Benckiser, or whoever it may be, and say, look, you could put us onto your PSL, and we will have a specialist in each of these individual areas that can cover, and we're niche specialists for you, but also you can use this across the board. So you guys get economies of scale, and we can probably be your boutique recruiter alongside your Michael Page or your Hayes or whoever you want as your top tier major supplier. And that is still the premise of us today. That still works. We've just got more people and we've become more specialized.
Yeah. Why do you think, like, I hear this so much, just always interested to hear people's take, that just spoke to so many people now on the podcast where they sort of, sometimes people will go, I wish we went niche more sooner, or we'll talk about that, you're talking about that it's actually your differentiator, or it's really important. Like, I don't know, what, from your perspective, a modern day recruitment bit, like, why is that so essential? Why is that so critical to a modern day recruitment business to have those niche? But I don't know, why is that important from your perspective? It'd be good to hear your take on why that's important.
Yeah, it's do you know what it is? It's just the modern day of recruitment and the modern day of how businesses want to engage in attracting talent and their EVP. So there's so much more today that is out, the internet, social media, etc., etc. There's Glassdoor, there's all these things, and businesses are so cognizant of their own brand. And it's really, people can go onto Twitter or, trash a brand, whatever it is, right? They can do it. So it starts there, really. And actually then, when they start thinking about their suppliers and who they want to be their representatives in the marketplace, they don't want somebody who's going to be uber salesy, trying to ram jobs down people's throats or anything like that. They want really, really credible, really, really bright individuals who understand A, their business, B, understand the types of candidate they're trying to attract, and C, handle them in the right way, treat them like human beings. And I think that is how recruitment has evolved today, and it's a far more professional industry than it was when I joined in 2002. And that is why niche specialization is so important for anyone. And like, if I could have another 20 people in the business, we'd still continue to do the same things that we're doing. We just keep segmenting again.
Yeah. What? Just on this really quickly, just again, interested to hear your thoughts.
Sure.
What sort of key markers do you look at, or indicators do you look at, that sort of gives you the feels of this could be a big area, this could be a big growth area? I'm trying to, interested to hear your thoughts on that. I'm not trying to get you to give all the secret sauce away, but what are some of the typical key markers that you look at that go, you know what, that could be a really interesting area that could be its own market itself? Those things.
A couple of different things. So I'll give you actually easier to probably give it as an example
nice.
Within our business. So within e-commerce and digital, we separated that out from our sales and marketing team a couple of years ago, because we realized that brands wanted to sell their products directly to us. They didn't want to sell them in the supermarkets or whatever it is. And then we realized that brands were actually selling a lot more of their products on Amazon. Mm-hmm. Standard, right? But there's loads of there's mom and pop brands in Amazon that are selling branded golf balls or whatever it is, picture frames, and they're making a couple of million quid. So we kind of saw this kind of trend happening, and obviously ridiculous growth of Amazon. Everyone kind of knows about that. And we basically just saw this ecosystem of businesses happening around Amazon and marketplaces. And basically just said, we're going to get in there early. We're going to basically be Amazon specialists. We're going to focus on just talking, knowing, understanding Amazon, being able to lots of literature about Amazon, candidate attraction, so that when businesses go to search for Amazon recruitment or recruitment experience, we're coming up. Yeah. We're our people are there. Now, other businesses have caught on to that. Of course they have. It's no secret that there've been billions and billions of pounds raised by businesses just acquiring brands that sell on Amazon. So that always happens. But we got there early. Yeah. So we're ahead of the game. We've got the brand, we've got the space in there, so it's easier for us to execute. And there will probably be 3 or 4 other areas now I can personally see in our space that are going to be super impactful. Like, there's a lot of legislation about reducing sugar content in products. So, think about the impact of that, the impact of climate on food. These are things that in the next 10 years are going to shape what products we buy on our shelves, sustainability. So we're already positioning our new desks with what's coming further down the line. Yeah.
So is this very much just being super curious, committing to your industry, being embedded in your industry, asking good questions, networking, speaking to people, and then I guess just being smart really with what you're reading, what you're taking in, the information that you're looking at.
Yeah, absolutely. Like my guess is you talk to loads of tech recruiters and you've probably got a great network. So that, in tech, there's new stuff going on there all the time, right? New stuff going on and new different things being tried, etc., etc. So again, depending on whatever industry you're in, I think as a leader and as a recruitment owner, you owe it to yourself to be the most knowledgeable person in the room about what's going on in your industry.
Yeah.
Because if you do, then you can see and spot the trends. You might spot a competitor doing something that looks quite interesting, and then you might be able to jump on the back of that. It's not, there's no shame in doing that. But if you're also the first person there and can recognize the need coming before anyone else does, that first mover advantage is huge.
Yeah, I love that. Thanks for sharing that. So, obviously, as I said in the introduction, so soon to be, correct me if I'm wrong here, but you're going to be just around 20 people in January, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
Yeah.
So, common question that I get, and I know we're sort of just jumping around a bit here, but common question that I get is typically, and I don't know if you can relate to this, but there seems to be like it can be like a real challenge for recruitment businesses to get past that like 10 headcount mark, and sort of build that sort of critical mass that enables them to go from 10, 15, 20, etc. So I guess I don't know if you could talk a bit about some of the challenges that you've had to work through in getting, I know it's not just about the headcount, but in terms of like just building a good group collective of profitable billers. I don't know, like what's been some of the challenges in breaking through that 10 headcount mark, and did you experience any challenges?
Experiences far too many. We can have a whole podcast just on the challenges.
Really?
Yeah, that's not just recruitment, that's just generally in life.
Yeah, for sure.
No, being serious. Yeah, you're right, and it is difficult. 10 is an important number, but also with when you're going past 10, you're also making a difference in terms of your cost base, the way your business is. You're making decisions, proper business decisions. But pre-10, you've always got the opportunity to push it back to a lifestyle business, retract to 6 or 7. Move everyone remote. That can happen. If you lost 1 or 2 people, you could make that decision. Once you've committed and you've gone to 10, 12, there's a bit more reality about the direction of travel that you're going. Now, luckily, I was always going this way, right? It was always trying to get here as quickly as we possibly could. And I'm actually pretty disappointed we're only at 20 people in January, given the age of the business. But, firm plan that we're going to accelerate and catch up on where I'd like us to be in a couple of years' time. Sure. But I think that main challenge or how do you get through it is when the times are good, and the times are, when you've got the opportunities, when you've got the good performers, don't sit and rest then. Right. That's the time to really push. That's the time to really, when you're tracking your job volumes and your job volumes are strong, you're tracking your conversions and your ratios are strong. That's the time to have your own KPI in place. Your own saying, okay, I've hit that now. Like some people will call it a hiring trigger. Yeah. Some people will look at it from a financial perspective, whatever it is. But have that in place, stick to it, be dedicated, but push through. And I think you can't do it just bit by bit, one at a time. You've got to really, really try and make the jump, because it won't all work. You will step back a little bit. So then you've got to be pretty tough about your decision making, because it's become a bigger business.
How important is it? Like, if you think of like your job now, do you think you stayed too close to the tools for too long? Was that a part of it, or was it just was it you just had to do that anyway? I don't know.
I was too nice.
You was too nice.
I like hiring people that I like. So
did you keep people in a business that maybe you shouldn't have?
Yeah, and probably experienced recruiters that ended up going into in-house jobs and things like that, who would be far better in those roles. But we liked them, got on well with them, maybe worked with them in previous businesses, whatever it is, and they're far better doing what they're doing now. But because we got on well and they were good people, I held on too long. And actually, I had to have a word with myself in 2018 into 2019 about toughening up. Otherwise, we just weren't going to kind of get there. And I had a non-exec at the time, which was recently evolved. But he had the same chat with me. He was kind of like, look, you're going to have to decide here what you're going to do. Yeah. You're either going to have to really, really push on, but you're going to have to toughen up on some of your decision making, or you can just crack on as you are, and everyone can be friends, but you're going to remain at 12.
What is it that you? I don't want to say struggled with, but what was it that sort of maybe, I don't know, what was it? Just that you're just an overall nice guy, or you didn't want to let people down? Did you feel responsible for these people? Like you knew, like what?
I mean, you probably. I'd like to say overall I'm a nice guy, and that's why. Do you know what? It's difficult when you've seen people do well and perform, and you know they can perform to a level, and you believe in them and you like them as people. You want them to succeed. You want to try and help them to succeed, and you'll do everything in your power to help them to get to where they should be or where they've been before.
Yeah.
But it changes. Instead, the market changes, people changes, their needs, wants, motivations, desires, they all change. And actually, you can only control the controllables. I'm sure loads of people have said that on the podcast. So, and it's so true. But actually, you do have to toughen up. If you're going to be a business owner, you're going to be looking at what your cost base is every month, and it's going up 60 grand, 70 grand, 80 grand. Like, if you're going to run a successful business, you have to make those decisions. And I make those decisions, and we make those decisions now. But I also have a leadership team that probably take some of those decisions away from me sometimes, and kind of say, like, I'd be like, let's try this or let's try that, and they're like, no, we've got to do the right thing. We're moving on, and we're going to make this decision.
Non-exec, you mentioned that. It's been a real popular message that I've had this year, which I find really interesting, because I do feel like I've recorded like a bit of a sort of short video series on like key insights from this year's conversations, and one of them is absolutely like, I don't think this will come as a surprise to you from sort of our interactions and stuff, but I do really believe that the modern day recruitment business owner, or the most successful recruitment business owners that I've spoken to, have way more humility than they do ego. So I think it makes sense, the fact that most messages, like I've had so many messages going, hey, you're connected to a lot of people, do you know any good non-execs, these things, because they're willing to ask for help. They don't feel like they know all the answers. So you mentioned non-exec there. So one, when did you engage with a non-exec, and where was the sort of driver motivation behind that? I mean, it makes sense, the fact that when you went down the VC route, you wanted that learning. So clearly you're someone that was willing to ask for help. And then two, how did you go about finding that person?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Good questions. I 100% believe in the non-exec and advisor route. I made a mistake when I set up Vertical Advantage, not getting a non-exec sooner. Okay. Because I thought, 2012, 2013, I'd had a lot of the learnings, and I felt like, great, I'm equipped now. I've done my 10 years, I've done 2 recruitment businesses. I know what I need to know. I can do this. So I did it for 3 years, got us to about 10 people across 2 different offices. There was a little bit of that back and forth, 12, down to 9, back to 11. And I was a bit like, okay, how do I get through it? And that was where I went and sought the help. And I asked every single supplier that I had who was involved in the recruitment industry who they knew and who they'd recommend. I did LinkedIn searches, and I probably met about 15 different people over a 6-month period.
Wow. What was it that you looked for?
2016.
What was it that you looked for that was important to you? I know this is nuanced, but what were the sort of important things for you out of interest?
Just someone that didn't just... They're the best one in the world. There are some people, maybe speak ill of the recruitment industry. There are some people in the recruitment industry who do a lot of talking but don't say very much. Yep. Right? So there was a lot of that kind of chat, and it's a lot of like up in the air and strategic and this and in that. I actually really, really wanted someone who was going to be really, really honest, really, really direct, said something in 1 sentence that they would, they wouldn't waste saying it in 3 sentences. They just tell me how it is. And I don't have time to, kind of read personality. I don't have time to kind of to have 4-hour meetings when we can do something in an hour. I'd rather we were kind of to the point, we moved on and we had those conversations. So there was a style match point. I was looking for the right kind of person, the right kind of style. And the guy I settled upon didn't know anything about our industry. He had a fairly corporate kind of background, but a global kind of background. And he'd been doing advisory for a couple of years, but he was really, really interested in what was going on. He was really interested in tech. He was really, really interested in markets. He was interested in international recruitment, and he had a good story himself, but he'd seen a lot of different things in a lot of different sectors, and that I thought was great. And he was exceptional. But we also worked together for 5 years and became too comfortable. Yeah. And when we parted ways earlier this year, we both agreed it was the right thing to do. Nice.
I love that.
Because again, learning journey had finished, because we worked together for 5 years. We were good mates, but
that's you been too nice again, mate.
There you go. It keeps coming back to that. We need to rename this podcast.
So I know you said it's evolved. So then, have you got a new exec now? A new non-exec?
Yes.
What was important this time? Because I think like now you're at a different business. What was important now that you was looking for out of interest that was important to you?
Yes. So because it's actually important that because we've got the two businesses. We wanted really someone who could work with both businesses.
Okay.
And I liken selling nurture as a proposition is a bit like selling a SaaS product.
Yeah.
It's a solution-based sell. You're asking someone to commit far higher amounts of money, and it's not like contingency recruitment or even a retainer. It's a lot more kind of complex than that. So actually, when we're thinking about evolving this, we wanted someone who could actually really help us, advise us on a solution-based selling proposition.
Yeah.
So maybe you'd come from an RPO background or a technology kind of background, but again, also on the recruitment side of things. So the guy that we found actually started just on the nurture business for 6 months, and then he started to pick up the VA stuff.
How did you find him?
Yeah.
How was it?
Again, recommendation.
Nice.
So we use a recruitment specific accountancy firm.
Yeah.
And the CEO of that firm I've got to know well over the last few years. And yeah, again, similar process to how I went before. Asked all my suppliers, asked all the people in the industry. Probably these days is now a little bit easier to find those people because they're all on LinkedIn networks. You see a lot of people doing talks and stuff like that. We've got a good training provider, so I asked him who he rated.
Nice.
And yeah, again, I found him that way.
So, okay, cool. So before we finish, and I wanted to ask you around nurture talent. So this was one of the other insights that I've taken. So it's interesting you mentioned. So one of the other things that I've definitely noticed this year is like definitely a rise in like solution selling, I would say. So I don't know if you've noticed this, but I would definitely say that like I think in the last 12, 18 months, it's definitely enabled or encouraged recruitment companies to think about their offering and how they could evolve it. And something that I've definitely noticed more and more of is this like talent partner model, which seems obviously a bit similar to nurture talent. So I guess interested to hear. So I feel like the common hypothesis that I get from people when I speak to people about who've done this or considering it is like instead of working with David, who has a business that wants to go from 10 heads to 15, 25 heads, has just raised Series A funding, whatever, instead of speaking to them about ones and twos, threes and fours every quarter or whatever, let's speak to David around how we can actually support his business for 6, 12 months. We're going to agree what the deliverables are on the hiring side each month. We're also going to help him shape their hiring process because that needs some work, understand what's possible, what they need to look for, these types of things. And instead of paying per person, you're going to pay us X per month, and there might be some deliverables in there where if you deliver 4 or 5 people, then you get an extra increase in terms of monetary or whatever. But what that means for David is he's got a dedicated talent partner. The hiring problem should hopefully be solved. He's got a dedicated person going out there every single day talking about their brand. They're building out their hiring process that could be useful for people in the future, and he's saving money.
Yeah.
Like that seems to be the typical hypothesis.
You should be our head of sales. You've nailed it.
But that seems to be like the hypothesis. So like how? But I do feel like there's different challenges in this from when I spoke to people that are doing it. So like, how is it actually played out? Does that hypothesis make sense? Like, it makes sense, doesn't it? So like, David, you can save money. You're going to work like all that. But like, what has been really difficult about it out of interest? Like, when actually executing?
Because trust is the big thing. So you're asking it's very, very easy to give a recruiter a job on a contingency basis.
Yeah, because you pay on delivery.
Yeah, exactly, right? Yeah. Even pay him a small retainer up front or whatever it is, you spent a couple of grand, whatever it is. Still, right? It's but you're then trying to convince someone to maybe part with 60, 80, 100 grand over a 6-month period, and they've got nothing for it. Before they've committed to it, they haven't got anything for it. And it's that you're not selling them a piece of technology. You can show them what it's like, and you can show them case studies of how you've done it really, really well before. But that person needs to trust you and needs to believe that you can deliver what you say you're going to deliver. And actually, more often than not, at some point, if they've got to CEO or founder level, they've been burned by somebody in recruitment at some point in their career.
So they've got a preconception. Trust's already broken for a lot of people.
Exactly that. So you've got to try and get your head around that. Now, if it really, really helps if you sell a concept that is like nurture. So if something as a service, this is talent as a service, you can call it that. So if your product or something that you sell is similar, and your product is also part of a supply chain, you're basically saying, look, recruitment is part of your supply chain. It's part of your DNA. It's just one component part of you building and scaling this business. You might outsource, you're not going to hire a chief legal officer, are you? You're going to outsource your legals to a law firm. You're probably not going to hire a CFO day one. You're going to outsource to an accounting firm. It's just the exact same thing.
Sure.
It's just an outsourced part of your supply chain, and it's not a direct overhead, right? So you're not paying national insurance. You don't have to employ someone. If you're not happy with it, you've got a 30-day notice period.
Sure.
So you're trying to give them comfort in terms of where they are, but you also need to be compelling that actually you've got good quality. You're delivering good quality. So the people that you line up to talk to them about who their talent partner is going to be need to be impressive.
Yeah.
They still need to be able to sell themselves. They need to be good recruiters. So these are, there are a lot of component parts, but it's incredibly rewarding.
Yeah.
It's basically from if I can liken it to anything from the recruitment agency side, it's basically like working for your best client.
What's been the biggest challenge that you least expected with it?
I think the biggest challenge is the door opening piece.
Okay.
It's the like how many proposals a month for new business can we actually get out? We've got Bowhurst and you've got LinkedIn and you've got TechCrunch and you can track and you can see where people are, but getting hold of people, just because someone's raised 5 million quid and they need to hire 50 people doesn't automatically give you the God-given right that they want to talk to you and hear about your service, right? You think this is amazing, they're going to be spot on for this, and it's an e-commerce business, something we know inside out. We're like, this surely is a no-brainer. And they're like, no, don't even want to have a conversation. So I think we underestimated that a little bit, but we're also getting a lot better at how we sell into those businesses. We've got growth hackers in these businesses and, entrepreneurs in residence. And basically they're just people who are working out within, growth tech firms, how we grow more, how we grow quicker, how we sell more. And actually we've needed to adopt that kind of mindset of how we develop business isn't the traditional recruitment methodology. We need to get away from that. We need to get to more of a solution selling model.
Yeah. So look, coming to the end here, I want to get to recent times and then sort of find out a bit about what's on the horizon for you guys. I know there's obviously still so much we can talk about, right? But I guess obviously when we were preparing for this, I know that you mentioned that. I hope you don't mind me sharing this, but again, correct me if I'm wrong. But obviously this year you've experienced nearly 80% growth on your NFI. So I guess to keep it recent, obviously we've had all-time high job markets, but what would you say has really contributed to that? What was it like? I'm sure you're spending a bit of time looking at this year now, thinking about it as well as next year. But what do you think are some of the fundamental things you did right this year that really enabled you to achieve that figure, do you think?
I honestly think it's what we did right last year that's made us do well this year. Really? I think that the recruitment market has been good. We all know it's been good. I actually don't know if nearly 80% growth is where that sits in the overall market for businesses of our size. If that's good, like as you said yourself, most businesses should be growing at a good level. I think I'm really, really proud of what the guys have achieved this year, and we're really, really happy with that. We've got another plan to do something similar next year, but it definitely stemmed from how we managed things from April to December of last year. That's what's enabled us to get to where we are.
What did you do right? Just do the right things, support when you could. Like, what was it?
We just over-indexed on helping.
Really?
We just went.
No surprise there, David.
Again, comes back to like the nicest guy in recruitment. I keep on labeling myself that. But we in all our sectors, we created spreadsheets of open spreadsheets of candidates who have been displaced in the industry. Amazing. And where we noticed that people were hiring directly, and there were relevant people on those spreadsheets, we'd send those spreadsheets to clients and say, look at this list. These are all people who are active in the market. Contact them directly. It's not a fee. It's not anything. We know you're hiring. There's some really, really good people in here. So we basically did a lot of free work for probably a 3-month period.
Yeah.
And we'd had a brilliant Q1, so that was great. And then we were able to really, really monetize that. I think a couple of my senior people stepped up ridiculously in terms of their networks, their market, how they were able to impact, took things on their own board. One guy started his own kind of podcast series with a guy in New York who was working in a similar market, and it was talking about the difference between the US market and here. Didn't ask him to do it. He just did it. He did a brilliant job, got him brilliant traction in the marketplace. So I had so thankful that I had a brilliant senior team, but also we just went out of our way to be nice,
just do the right thing
as much as we possibly could. Because it was pretty horrendous for everyone, right?
Well, I do really feel like that really resonates with me, and I do feel like this will play out in recruitment, I think, in the long term. But I do feel like being nice isn't a typical business owner, business person trait. But I think that should change, and I think that will change, and I do think empathy, compassion, doing the right thing, being a good human are absolutely brilliant business traits. And I do think that'll change. I don't know. That just really resonates with me, just because I think the journey that I'm on, so far, and it does play out. But I think it's when you're you did those things not because you're in 24 months' time we're going to do 5 deals with that company. You're doing it because it feels fundamentally right in your bones to do it, to do the right thing. And the way of the world, it then comes back round, right? So absolutely, and there is all those those different things around business owners needing to be tough and harsh, and there are times where you've obviously got to make difficult decisions. I'm not a believer in that, but what I am a massive believer in is really, really understanding people. And I think to with the way of the world today, with mental health, with physical health, with the way that you cannot grow and scale a business in the recruitment industry without being really, really interested in your people and what's actually going on in their lives outside of the day-to-day. Because if someone's sleeping badly, they're going to struggle to recruit properly. If someone's eating badly, they might be experiencing some healthy, it's all completely interconnected. And if you aren't interested in that kind of stuff today, the future, you're going to really, really struggle to grow. And I think that's fundamental in terms of building a business now, and maybe not just recruitment, other sectors as well. So let's wrap up then. What's on the horizon for VA then? What are you excited about? Talk to us next year. What's going on?
Super excited. We've done a big piece with the new non-exec on further divisionalizing.
Okay.
So all these new hires. So probably most of our guys are probably working across 3 or 4 different skill sets at the moment. That's going to go down to 2.
Oh, wow.
So all these new so it'll be slimmed down. So we probably segment out probably 7 or 8 different areas that we'll really, really focus on. Some are growth areas, some are more core areas. So we've got to take that to clients. We've got a new client management strategy in terms of client reporting and being more connected with our clients. So we've got to build on that. We've got some new tech coming in and new phone systems coming in early part of next year. It's going to be interesting, but that's going to help. We're hybrid working, so we're 3 days in the office, 2 days from home, and a couple of people have more flexible contracts. So we need to, again, gear up for the future by investing in some really, really good tech around that. So there's some of the things, but honestly, over all of that, the thing that I most enjoy and most looking forward to getting my teeth into is more growth for both of the businesses, because we've got amazing opportunities to continue growing. And I love hiring. I love seeing the business grow in terms of headcount. So I can see it's going to be an exciting year.
Love it. Well, look, David, thank you so much. Continue being you, my friend. Continue being nice.
Thank you.
Thanks for being so honest and sharing everything on here.
Having me.
Really excited to share this with everyone. So, huge thanks for coming on the pod.
No worries. Thanks a million, mate. Cheers.